Welcome back. Welcome back to Mixtapes to Myself. So, as I said, welcome back to the next chapter of Mixtapes to Myself, a novel written by me. To those of you who have already joined us and are coming back, welcome back. To those of you who are just joining us now, thank you so much. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. So we last left Sam in the parking lot of the school that her current self works for. Now, Sam is coming from 2008. So she's currently in college. Like we said, or in the last chapter, yesterday she spent a very peaceful day going through her classes, going through her daily routine, spending some time with her family, eating meatballs. We talked about food. In today's chapter, we're really going to explore what current Sam's life is really like. So, without much of an ado, Chapter 16, A Day in the Life of Miss Reece. Sam grabbed her phone and slung her work bag over her shoulder, then her purse, picked up her coffee in one hand while pulling her keys out of the ignition with the other. She didn't love the balancing act that this seemed to be, but she knew she wasn't going to take a second trip. When she got to the doors and reached out with her empty hand to pull it open, she realized it was locked. Well, what the hell am I supposed to do now? She said to herself, exasperated. As she stood there, unsure of what her next steps should be, and just about to trudge through the grass to the front of the school, she saw a very tall man in jeans and a white t-shirt with the same steel-toed work boots her dad used to wear. He looked like he had time traveled as well, straight out of the 1970s. She had no idea what she was supposed to say, but she made the executive decision that this was probably Ron, who had been mentioned in her letter from herself. He opened the doors and said, "Can I help you?" And Sam looked at him. Pure confusion spread across her face. All of a sudden, the tall man started guffawing loudly and said, "Just kidding, Reece. Early as always." He held the door open for her and she walked into the school behind him, still juggling her plethora of bags, coffee, and keys. "Thanks so much," she said as she made her way into the hallway, not really knowing where to go. She hadn't really thought this far ahead and was now beginning to spiral into a light, wafting sort of panic. The tall man started walking down the hall and said loudly, "I just finished hanging up the painting in your classroom if you want to come check it out." Sam couldn't believe her luck and just smiled in agreement and followed the giant man down the hallway, trying to figure out how she could confirm that this was Ron. He entered a glass-paneled wooden door with Miss Reece, Social Studies, written on it. It was absolutely everything she could have possibly hoped for in a classroom. There was artwork hanging all over the walls, some paintings, and some student work. She recognized the board that used to hang in her parents' kitchen, with a cork board on one side and a white board on the other. Her desk had an ugly red lamp on it that she recognized from her high school production of You Can't Take It With You. Sam had always had a penchant for loving things that were characteristically unlovable and ugly, and this lamp was no exception. The back table was a combination of over-organization with a splattering of the chaos that comes with a classroom filled with kids. Right below the map on the wall beside her desk hung a sign reading, "Miss Reece's Calm Corner." It featured a scenic photograph and a quote from LL Cool J. When adversity strikes, that's when you have to be the most calm. Take a step back, stay strong, stay grounded, and press on. Beneath it sat a small inflatable chair covered in flowers beside the largest clipboard known to mankind, the very one that had once lived in her mother's sewing room. Sam tilted her head like a confused puppy at the whole scene, but she couldn't deny that it painted a pretty clear picture of the kind of teacher she would become, or in the case of today, already was. When she snapped out of her confused reverie, she turned back around and the tall man was pointing to the huge painting hanging high above the room. "It looks great," she said, hardly able to mask her happy excitement that this was her classroom. He gave her a thumbs up and smiled, looking proud, before saying, "I told you, girl, I've got you if you ever need anything," as he made his way out the door. Considering what she had read in that note, this pretty much confirmed that this was Ron. So now at least she knew who she could go to if she needed anything today. She still had no clue who Bailey was, but she assumed that information would come. She was still looking around the room, trying to absorb everything around her. The back wall had windows that had been painted over on the opposite side, which she had used as whiteboards. It was a fun fact she loved sharing with people that you can use dry erase markers on glass. She only knew this because her mom used to set them loose on their front porch and let them decorate those windows anytime they were too rambunctious in the house. On the windows in her classroom were 6 names under the heading Rock Star of the Week. How cute, she said to herself as she turned and started investigating some more. She walked over to what was presumably her desk and found a small binder with a sticky note labeled May 16th. She opened it and found a detailed schedule of her classes for the day. There were printed rosters for each class, minute-by-minute instructions of what to teach, seating charts, and each class had a designated student who she could appoint teacher of the moment if she felt the need to tap out for a minute. Sam's head was spinning at the sheer planning this must have taken, but then remembered who she was talking about. She was a systematic and obnoxiously prepared human, and given a few more years and hundreds of students, she could definitely see herself becoming an absolutely organized monstrosity. Author's note. All right. So, my first author's note is about my classroom. The description of the classroom was my actual first middle school classroom. It was my last classroom in the United States before I moved to Morocco. I loved that classroom so much. Everything about the description is 100% true. 100%. The ugly lamp, the calm corner, the LL Cool J quote. I liked to put up, I made a calm corner because I had one specific student who was going through a lot. And so I made a calm corner, but then other students were very upset that he got his own corner. So then I made 2 more calm corners. And each of the calm corners had their own very serene looking, beautiful poster. And if you didn't look close enough, you're just like, oh, that's really nice. And then you'd read the quote and it'd be by somebody completely bizarre, and everybody would go, huh? When they looked closer. Um, I love that quote by LL Cool J. I just think most teachers would not put a quote by LL Cool J on their wall. Me, I was like, heck yeah, man knows what he's talking about. It's a beautiful quotation. It makes sense. I will say I did not choose middle school. I was put in middle school. And it turned out I was really good at it and I really loved it. But yeah, oh, my classroom. I loved my classroom so much. Genuinely. And shout out to my rock stars of the week. If any of you ever watch this, you know who you are. I know, I think it was several years ago, but I was in Morocco and I actually got a message on Instagram from one of my former students who had been going through her closet or something and found a crumpled Rockstar of the Week certificate with her name on it. Because for a while each week I would choose a Rockstar of the Week and they would get their name on the board in the back. And I would print out a little certificate that was like, you're the rock star of the week. And it was signed by me. And they got to bring it home to their parents. And it became a thing. And kids were super excited about it. And was it a little bit dorky? Yep. Did I love it? Yes. But yeah, I was editing this chapter, and as I was going through it, I was just like smiling ear to ear because like every single detail is 1000% what my classroom was like. Student artwork, because students would try to throw their art away, and I'd be like, no, 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 and I'd hang it. I had vejegante masks from like a Puerto Rican art project that they had done hanging in the back. I had various student artwork. I had quotations from students because middle schoolers will say the funniest things humanly possible known to mankind. So anytime they said something really funny, I would put it up on the wall. Some examples. One of my students, he's like a 13-year-old boy, and I asked a question. It was something about war, and maybe it was about like the Battle of Thermopylae, and or like one of the battles or something. And he like raised his hand. He's like, as the great Kelly Clarkson said, what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. And I was like, yeah, okay. But coming from like a young teenage boy, it was a really bizarre thing to say. So I said, dude, write that down. So he wrote it down and it went on the wall. I had another one when I taught geography. I would ask the kids, like, I'd put a map up, and the first thing we do is, what do you see? What do you notice? Observation, really important, especially in history, geography. Well, observation is important in pretty much everything. What do you see? What do you notice? And it was a map of Japan. It was a topographical map of Japan. Not topographical, I'm sorry. It was a physical map of Japan, not topographical, but a physical map of Japan. And the physical map at the sea level, as you get closer to shore, sea level is expressed as lighter blue until it hits white, until you hit land. This kid was very, very confident, raised his hand very seriously. And I called his name. I said, dude, what do you see? And he said, Japan seems to be emitting a white foam. What? I said, write it down. Went on the wall. So yeah, my classroom was a testament to the wonderful daily chaos that was my room. The back table, there was organization. I had extra pens, pencils. I had my homework trays, but it was always a disaster zone. It was always crazy. I loved that classroom. I loved that classroom so, so much. There were people who did not love that classroom. And I didn't care. I didn't care at all. I was like, it's my classroom. I refuse to live in a Spartan-esque classroom. Like, I want it to feel lived in. I want you to walk into my classroom and feel like, oh my gosh, there's so much going on here. Because it's not a distraction, it's a testament. This is what people don't always understand. Like, a sparse classroom is a sad classroom. I wanted my classroom to feel warm. And I really think that it did. It became a safe space for a lot a lot of students and myself. It was a wonderful place. That lamp is also real. I miss that lamp every day. I loved that ugly lamp. I do have a penchant for ugly things. I like things that everybody else goes, and I'm like, I love it. It's so pretty. But yeah, to any of my former students who might be watching, I hope you loved my classroom as much as I did. And I think most, if not all of you did. So, anyways, back to the story. She read through all the plans and everything seemed pretty straightforward. Now, she had substituted a few classes before at some local high schools and elementary schools, but she had purposely avoided middle school. Middle school was, in her honest opinion, one of the scariest places on earth. She would probably rather be spelunking in a cave and then fall into a pit of snakes than be surrounded by a bunch of hormonal 12 to 14-year-olds. Sam liked to think that she was a relatively good person, but she even remembered how horrible she had been between the ages of 12 and 17. But 13-year-old Sam, she was like a nightmare wrapped in metal spikes, violently spinning towards anyone who came into her path like the Tasmanian devil. She couldn't imagine having 20 of those at a time. At the end of the binder, she found small notes about behavior. Some of it warned of specific students, but went into detail of why they might be acting out. All of it was tinged with a request for patience and love over everything else. She was reminded of her favorite teacher growing up, and her heart was glowing at the idea of becoming more like her. The more she thought about being a middle school teacher today, the more she realized she was equal parts excited, terrified, but determined. She was dead set on making sure she kept up the facade and no one would change how they saw the real Miss Reece. She was terrified that somehow they would all see right through her and realize there was something off about her today. She was also exhilarated by the opportunity to try out teaching for the day and see where her life would end up taking her after she graduated from college next year. The last thing she noticed before she shut the binder was a bright orange sticky note. It simply said, "When in doubt, channel mom." Sam cackled at the thought and knew exactly what she meant by that without even having to think too hard. Erin Reece was like a mind-reading soothsayer when she was a child. It was like she didn't just have eyes in the back of her head, but she had a third eye that floated around and was watching you at all times. She had recently found out that a lot of it was her mom just being exceptionally clever and really good at being sneaky. The first time she had walked home from the bus stop by herself, she walked into the house and her mom had asked her how it was. She replied that it was good and pointed out that she had, in fact, made it home alive and with all of her limbs. Yes, baby. Her mother then said, "I like that you looked both ways when you crossed the one-way street. Really good job," as she sat there sipping on her coffee. Sam was wide-eyed, wondering how in the hell she could have possibly known that. It turns out she had hidden in the Christmas trees on display for sale and then ran behind the businesses and literally jumped her neighbor's fence just to watch her walk home. She had just come clean about that story recently, and you could have caught flies in Sam's gaping wide gob. Here she was thinking her mother had otherworldly powers, and it turns out she was just really good at stalking her kids. All right, channeling mom. I Well, I think I can do that. We'll find out now, won't we? She said to herself at her desk. She looked at her schedule and was relieved to see that she had first period off. So she had some time to prepare for her first class, which started around 9:20. She flicked on her delightfully hideous desk lamp and turned off the glaring overhead lights and sat down to prepare for the day. Suddenly, the noise from the hallway began, and she had been instructed by the binder to be in the hallway to monitor the students starting at 8:05. She wandered out from behind her desk, hidden in a safe corner in her darkened classroom, and walked into what seemed like the first bubblings of hallway chaos. The first few kids walked in, and in her best chirpy, sunshining morning voice, she started saying, "Good morning," to all of them. Some students smiled cheerily, replied with their own good mornings. Some students were clearly still half asleep and through open mouths and yawns that mumbled their "oohs" to her as they stumbled towards their lockers. She had forgotten how small some middle schoolers were, but was soon reminded when she saw a boy who had a cloth zip-up binder slung over his shoulders like a messenger bag. She heard what she assumed was the warning bell ring, and students started to pick up their pace and started rushing off in different directions to different classrooms. The teacher in the classroom next door had run into her classroom in a rush, but then popped her head out to say good morning, bagel still in her mouth, before running to her desk. Sam was rushing students along, hustling them to their classes when the bell rang. The final stragglers were wandering towards their classes, and once the hallways were empty, Sam retreated again to her darkened classroom. The day of teaching was everything she had expected it to be, while being nothing like she could have expected it to be. Miss Bailey had finally walked into her classroom halfway through first period to say hi, and Sam immediately liked her. She had a dry humor and sarcasm that immediately made her feel like home. She brought her a homemade banana nut muffin and then told her a story about her cats breaking two of her dishes last night before realizing she needed copies for her next class and rushing out again with the promise to see her at lunch. She popped her head back in and said, "Magri's for lunch?" And Sam nodded, not knowing what she was agreeing to, but embracing the unknown anyways. She hadn't packed anything for lunch, and while Sam might have left something for her in the fridge, she didn't see a problem with grabbing herself something while she was there. Her morning classes went pretty well. Nothing was on fire, no one was damaged, and everyone made it out alive. So she figured everything was okay. There were a few hiccups, like a girl who could not contain herself. But then one of her classmates intervened before Sam even had to. Her friend had said to her, "Girl, you know Miss Reece tells you to check it at the door." The spirited kiddo had walked over to the classroom door and then very dramatically mimicked taking all of her excess energy and attitude off of her like a bodysuit and placed it next to the door in a small pile. She then walked back to her seat and quietly sat down with her hands folded and continued reading the passage she had been instructed to read. It was all Sam could do to walk over to her desk and look for something in her drawer while she held back her laughter. It was one of the most bizarre and hilarious things she had ever seen, but she was happy to have her sitting quietly and didn't want to ruin that with her giggling. The amount of self-correction and peer policing that was happening, it was like her class was its own inanimate organism. It was incredibly peculiar, but she had an immense sense of relief that she didn't have to bend over backwards to run these classes for Miss Reece. The bell rang for the kids to go to lunch, and Sam sat down Taking a deep breath. She was absolutely exhausted, but she realized that she was having fun. Even the aggravating moments were at the very least hilarious. She had some kids who were not having great days and started to take it out on her, but a quick chat up at her desk had usually sorted that out. There was another student who had kept insisting on calling her mom, and when Sam had looked at her, she had replied to herself, "Not mom, Miss Reece, yeah, I know." And she had walked off to the lunchroom before Sam could even react. She was still trying to process the mom debacle when red haired Miss Bailey popped back into her classroom to go to lunch. "You ready to go?" Bailey asked her as she fumbled around in her purse, presumably looking for her keys. "Absolutely." She breathed out gratefully as she grabbed her purse and followed her out of the classroom door. They walked to the intersection of the hallways and were heading to the parking lot when Sam thought to ask her, "Hey, what's with the mom thing?" She wasn't sure if Bailey would understand the question, but she figured it wouldn't hurt to ask. "Oh, Amy?" Bailey said with a chuckle. "Yeah, she's been trying that a lot lately, huh?" They were walking through the parking lot, and Sam was thinking back to her childhood and couldn't remember one time that she called one of her teachers mom or dad. It seemed strange. Bailey continued, "I know she doesn't have a ton of support at home, so I think she just likes knowing that you're there." They climbed into Bailey's car, and Sam let that sentence really sink in. She was thinking about having so little support at home that you resort to calling your history teacher mom. She made the decision to try to talk to her after lunch and see how she's doing. She also made a promise to herself to hug her mom when she got home. When she came out of her silent musing, she found herself in front of a brick and wooden paneled shop with Magri's Market and Deli printed on a sign on the roof. They walked in, and Sam was reminded of all the small mom and pop shops that she grew up frequenting. It had the same welcoming, friendly neighborhood vibe as Coffee House, but with more hometown farm to table feel to it. The menu was huge, and Sam took forever to choose just one sandwich. They got everything to go, and they packed everything in a leftover Charleston shoebox. Sam and Bailey went to eat in her classroom, and they sat and chatted about how their mornings had been. Sam listened as Bailey told her about the kids, talking about the challenges, and shared some funny recent stories about her life. The sandwich was wonderful, and the company was an absolute delight. She could fully understand how and why she ended up here. She could tell that she had a great friend in Bailey, and she could definitely tell that there was a level of fulfillment that another job might not be able to provide. Even something as small and funny as the young lady who peeled off her dramatic side made her feel like she was creating lasting memories for them and for her. Another author's note. I'm in a really good mood today, so we're going to sing a lot. Magri's is a real place. It is a real deli and farm stand. It is, well, I haven't been in a really long time, like almost 10 years long time. But I can go ahead and assume that they are just as good as they were 10 years ago. They had, hands down, the best sandwiches ever, ever. They also had some of the best produce because, again, it was like a farm stand kind of. So, like, they pulled from local produce from like Ludlow and the surrounding farm town areas. Um, But also, the people who work at Magri's are the nicest human beings on the planet. I don't know her name, but I can hear her voice in my head, me walking up to the counter and her going, "Hey, sweetheart, what are you having today?" I'm like, "I don't know yet. Take your time. I'll come back." But she was like, they were all the nicest. And absolutely, like, sometimes we all couldn't get out to go to the deli. So sometimes you would like take orders and like one person would go and they'd give you like a Charleston chew box or like a Babe Ruth candy bar box. And you just have line of sandwiches. And you'd walk into the teacher's lounge and be like, "Lunch." And it was like the bell in the old West, and everybody would do, and we'd all end up at a big table passing it around, like grabbing our sandwich. But masterful place. If you ever have a chance to go, please visit. They're magnificent human beings, wonderful sandwiches, great business, just a beautiful place. A beautiful place filled with beautiful food and wonderful people. Like, can't express it enough. All right, back to the story. The rest of her day was as relatively uneventful as teaching middle school can be. It was the occasional shouts over the din of a classroom, the off topic conversations about life, the questions about her personal life that she ignored with a laugh while redirecting the students back to history. There was also the conversation she had decided to have with Amy about the mom situation. She didn't want to ask too many questions or be too specific, but she wanted to make sure that Amy knew that she was there for her if she ever needed her. "Okay, kiddo," she started off. "You know you can't call me mom. I know this because you corrected yourself earlier." Amy rolled her eyes ever so slightly and said, "Yeah, miss, I know, I know." "But," Sam said, and saw Amy's eyes narrow a little bit as she stared back at her. "That doesn't mean that you can't come to me anytime if you need me. I will always be here for you." She emphasized the word always as much as she could without sounding like a Hallmark card. Sam remembered one of the notes from the binder that her older self had left her, and she quoted it to Amy. "Once you're one of my kiddos." Before Sam could even finish it, Amy had said, "Always one of your kiddos. Yeah, I know, miss." And she smiled and turned to walk back to her desk before whipping her head back around and saying, "Thanks, Mom," in a whisper all the way back to her desk. Now it was Sam's turn to roll her eyes, but she couldn't help but chuckle to herself. Amy reminded her of herself when she was that age, an unstoppable, stubborn force from which there was no escape and no argument. She thought to herself, "Well, I'm sure that'll be fun." And as she stood and shouted, "All right," to the class and started the lesson. Eventually, there were goodbyes and see you tomorrows. She stood at the intersection of all the hallways when the day had ended. She waved to all the kids as they left and said byes to as many of them by name as was possible. She may not have gotten them all, but she definitely remembered quite a few. Before she left, the exuberant young lady from this morning had quietly come back and picked up her drama, placed it back on like a priceless dress, and then marched herself loudly out of the school. Amy quietly walked out with her friends, but then walked back to whisper, "Bye, Miss Reece," with a very serious face before laughing and walking out. Sam shook her head, knowing that there was no stopping this kid, but also knowing that she genuinely loved that about her already. She knew Sam would want to keep things appropriate at school, but something in her gut told her that Amy needed this more than Sam could care about propriety. Another author's note. That one's a little shaky. That's okay. We're going to leave it. This one's going to be unintentionally long because this one is about my students, my babies. Something that I did put in this chapter that is 1000% and will always be, if I am ever teaching a class, this will always be my mantra and I will never stop. And I don't care how old you are. Because when I taught English as a language, I had students who were 60, 65, 60, almost 70 years old. Once my kid, always my kid. Once my student, always my student. You need me, I am there. I have got you. My first year, it was really, really hard to adjust. But once the connection was there with my kids, it's there. And I've had other teachers over the years be like, the lines are blurred. You could set up boundaries now. And I'm like, I don't think you understand. I can't set up boundaries now. It's already there. Like I'm already theirs and they're already mine. You can't cut that now. Like you just can't. So to all of my babies, you know who you are. I hope some of you are actually watching these videos. I love, 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 love every single one of you. You all hold a very special place in my heart. I had a student a couple months ago, Marty, because it's not his real name, it's the nickname that I gave him in middle school. Which is one of the things he told me. He was like, Miss, I still go by my nickname. Everybody calls me Marty. Like, is that a good thing? He was like, no, I love it. I was like, oh, thank God. Because teachers, when we give nicknames, we can either ruin a person's life or make it completely okay. But he had, like, I get texts like on Insta and like various places from students being like, do you remember me? And I'm like, bro, are you kidding? At some point I'll pull it out. I'm tempted to just like walk off camera and bring it over, but it's a waste of time. Well, recording time, not like time. It's never a waste of time. I have a 2-inch binder filled with stuff from my kiddos. 2 inches. And like the kid who I just mentioned, Maddie, he had texted me and he was like, Miss, do you remember me? Pulled the binder out, was able to find the whatever it is that you hand out for the 8th grade step up with his name on it. Found a card that he made me when he was in like 7th grade. Sometimes I find there's a lot of apology notes in there for like bad behavior. Miss, I'm really sorry that I wasn't really like good today in class. And I'm like, I kept all of those. I have artwork. I have notes. My very last day at the school, or last weeks at the school, I set out paper and it basically became my yearbook. And so I have little like notes, little full blown letters from students all across my career. And I'm incredibly, incredibly lucky because not everybody gets that. And granted, I do acknowledge the fact that I got that because I put that effort in to get that kind of a thing. But yeah, I can't express enough how much I love my kiddos still to this day. All of them are adults now. You're all grown. Some of them are in their 30s now. Welcome. Because I did teach high school my first year, so I do have some kids who are in their 30s. I know. Welcome to the club. I'll be out of the club soon because I'll be 40 next year. Who cares? Specifically, I want to point out the check it at the door girl. I don't know if she's ever going to watch this. I hope she does. She is she's a wonderful person. I love her still to this day. One of the last times I went home, we did try to like coordinate to like have her come to the person who's based on, who Bailey is based on, who is my best friend. But I was staying with her for a little bit, and we tried to get her to come over so that we could like catch up and see each other, because me and Bailey both taught her at the same time. Bailey, I'm gonna keep calling her Bailey. I'm not calling her by her name at this point. But we taught her at the same time, and so like we have this really, really strong bond with a lot of these kids. And now they're all grown. She's 26 years old, so now it's like not weird. Like, I'm old, you're a grown adult. It's not weird if we hang out and reminisce about the olden days. But she was filled with energy all the time, constantly moving. And I'd be like, girl, you gotta chill. Like, I don't know what to tell you, but you need to bring it down a notch. And one day I like pulled her into the hallway and I was like, what can we do? Because I can't keep doing this. I can't do it every day. I will die. I swear to God, child. I got a headache behind my eyeball. What can we do? She's like, Miss, what if I check it at the door? And I was like, okay. And she did exactly what I did on the video. Pulled it off, neatly folded it, placed it by the door, and she would leave it there. And dead serious, she would leave it there for the day. And her teachers were like, what happened to her? I was like, she checked it at the door. And then she'd pick it up at the end of the day and she'd walk up and be like, bye. Bye, sweetheart. Have a good day. I don't know what's happening, but you do you, boo boo. Yeah. But a lot of weird stuff. Like a lot of weird stuff. And honestly, the self-running, like policing classes, a lot of the times that did happen. Like they just figured their own stuff out and knew like I was there if I needed, like they needed me. Like I ran the classes. It's not like I was sitting there doing nothing. But they spent a lot of time self-led, which was awesome. That's like what you want to see as an educator. You don't want to be standing there being, and then this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. You want them to be inquisitive and like doing the work and exploring and all this other stuff. And that's what they did. And it was awesome. Like it was really cool. So to my students, if you ever watch this, I love, 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 love you guys so much. You are my little buttercups. You're my little sunshines. Thank you all for making my career absolutely worthwhile. Like, absolutely every second of every stressful day, you guys made it all worth it. So I love y'all. Thank you. Back to the end of the story. A while later, Sam waved to a few coworkers as she was leaving and heading to her car. As she pressed the button to unlock it, she marveled again at the shiny newness of this set of wheels in front of her, but also of this life she got to live for a day that would hopefully someday be hers. She could never in a million years have guessed what it would feel like to drive something so nice, or to actually enjoy teaching middle school for a day. So she relished in the experiences now. She hopped in, threw her bags in the passenger seat, and started the car. She suddenly realized that this was the first journey where she hadn't immediately called Nick. She flipped to her messages and sent him a quick text letting him know that she had traveled again, and if he wanted to know what was up, to give her a call. She went back to the maps and found the directions to the going away party. She clicked it, and the directions popped up on her screen. Oh, she was relieved to know that there were still no major highways, and it followed a similar path of state routes and back roads. Her favorite. She propped the phone on her dashboard and pressed the start button before slowly backing out of her spot and heading towards the main road. She could definitely get used to this, she thought to herself as she started to organize her thoughts and mentally prepare. She had made it through a whole school day without anyone really noticing. But could she make it through a party? She wasn't sure, but she figured it didn't hurt to try. All right, and thus ends chapter 16, A Day in the Life of Miss Reece. So we got to spend an entire day with Sam exploring what it's like to be a middle school teacher, to have to be the grown-up in the room, but more importantly, to have to put your own discomfort and your own ideas of what should be into what needs to be, which I think is a really important lesson that I learned as an educator personally. Because sometimes you want something to be a certain way, something should be a certain way, but it's not. So you find a way to adjust because some things are more important than those other things. And the things that are more important are people, humans. The students and the students in this story, I did not want you to think of them as just students because they're humans, they're people. And that's what I think a lot of people miss when they think about teaching. They're not just your students, they're human beings. And more importantly, and very cliche, they are the future of humanity. So teaching them to be human at that age is more important than teaching them what Mesopotamia is. Let's be honest. Anyways, thank you all for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed it. We will be back again next Saturday. Thursday, Wattpad is officially, I want to say, we just keep trucking. So Wattpad is officially every Thursday, 7 p.m. Moroccan time, 2 p.m. Eastern time. So please, if you would like to read the chapters, you can find them over there. Again, if you want to watch the chapters, we're here. And again, thank you all for joining me so much. I say this every week. Please like, share, subscribe, and please comment. This week's, we don't really have an official question. It's more of observation. Like, did you have a classroom that you felt the most safe in? Did you have a teacher that made you feel the same way I felt about my students, my kiddos? But comment, let me know. I love hearing about, people who have had teachers who have inspired them to maybe not be better, but just to be themselves. Because better is a stupid word sometimes. It's like normal. I hate the word normal. Normal is bleh. Normal should only be used in scientific settings. There is no normal. Not societally, or at least I don't think there should be. Be who you are, because you're beautiful, just as you are. Anyways, thank you all for being here. Share, like, subscribe. I do read the comments. Please subscribe. We're getting closer to 100. which isn't a lot, but it's something. I'm recording this in the middle of July. It's not going to go out, I think, until the beginning of August. So I got a couple weeks until this comes out. Let's hope that it's already over 100 by the time this comes out. Who knows? Anyways, thank you all for joining me. I love y'all so much. Share, like, subscribe. And like I end every week, please go out and do some good. Spread the goodness, spread the kindness, spread some sunshine. And thank you all for being here today. I love you all so much. Have a wonderful week, and I will hopefully see you next week. All right. Bye, y'all. Mwah. All right. And thus ends chapter 5. Apparently, I didn't need to make up a blooper.